You are now joining the meeting.
I would like to call to order the meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen for Tuesday,
This
October
meeting is being
20th.
recorded and or transcribed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to say that Alderman Rick Addy, everyone's here tonight. Alderman Rick Addy's on the front row down here instead of up here with us because we are trying to stay socially distant. So everyone is in attendance tonight. The first thing on our agenda is to actually adopt the agenda for the meeting, and I have one addition. If you would add at 12A for Billy Cruz to address the Board of Aldermen. Mr. Cruz had requested to be on our agenda back in August and kindly waited for us to work through a lengthy process, and so we welcome him tonight at 12A to speak on our agenda. That is the only change I have. Does anyone else have a change? No one? Okay, then the agenda with that one addition.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you for being here tonight. In the good news category, which we seem to have little of very often these days, I want to report to you what our tax numbers are. As you can imagine, we hold our breath every month on the 15th waiting for our checks to come in. And as I've mentioned many times in reporting these tax numbers, they actually reflect the taxes that were collected 2 months prior. So the check that we received October the 15th is actually reflective of taxes that were taken in the month of August. Unfortunately, the hotels continue to struggle. The hotel motel taxes for the month of August came in at $34,914.23, which in the good news category is up 81% from last month, but is down 27% from the same month last year. We were really excited to see that our restaurants are bouncing back. The 2% food and beverage tax came in at $278,294.98, which is up 18% from last month, and it's up 2% from the same month last year, which I think is great news to see that our August this year, our 2% tax was actually higher than our August of 2019. Also excited to see that our sales tax for the month of August came in at $895,581.95, which is up 19% from last month, and that is up 6% from the same month last year. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel, people, and I'm excited to see the way that our tax numbers are coming back up. It looks like people are ready to get out and about and do some eating and some shopping, and we encourage you to do that safely. And we also encourage you, as it gets close to the holiday season, I've seen so many articles that talk about how everyone's gonna shop online this Christmas. Please don't everyone shop online this Christmas. Please everybody shop locally. We have so many amazing stores on every corner of this town. And so we encourage people to start shopping now. Shop early and often, so, but do it at home. Election day is just around the corner, 2 weeks from today. And I did talk to our circuit clerk, Jeff Busby, earlier today. And if you plan to absentee vote, the last day that you can do that is Saturday, October 31st. Jeff did ask me to encourage anyone who is 65 and older to please go and absentee vote. It's just much safer for you that way. So if you will absentee vote before the end of the day on October the 31st. He did say if you came that day, you had to have Halloween candy to enter. Also, I thought this was super exciting. In our last national election, I asked Jeff how many absentee votes they received in that national election, and they received 2,300, okay, total. As of close of business today, they're at over 4,000 for this election, which I think is so exciting that the people of Lafayette County are engaging and excited to let their voices be heard. So with that, I will ask the board to authorize the approval of the minutes of the special meeting on October the 1st, the regular meeting on October the 6th, and the special meeting on October the 12th.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ask you to authorize the approval of accounts for all city departments.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ask you to consider the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? And now, probably the most exciting thing on our agenda tonight is recognition of our 2020 Firefighter of the Year. Let Chief Gardner come up to make this presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Our 2020 Firefighter of the Year is firefighter EMT Rochelle Harwood. She's been with the department for 5 years, which is very hard to believe. She's a firefighter EMT, and she was nominated by the members of the fire department because of her great attitude. She's always wanting to help others, and she never gives up. So we are very proud to present this to Rochelle, who is our first female Firefighter of the Year.
We are very proud of Rochelle as well. Keisha has something to present you just from the board, just to tell you how much we appreciate your hard work. I know what an honor it is to be Firefighter of the Year in that department, because that is an amazing department full of amazing firefighters, and that they selected you, I think, probably speaks volumes. So thank you for all you do. I love to see some girl power in action, and we're very proud of you. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is consideration of a request from Scott Whitaker to continue a previously granted approval at the former Pita Pit location at 309 North Lamar. Let Mr. Carter come up.
Y'all remember a couple weeks ago, we were up here talking about the former Pita Pit. Dr. Whitaker's wanting to put in a pizza restaurant up there. We had some issues with his exhaust hood termination. You had asked us to go back and reevaluate, see if we could come up with a solution. Talked to William Stewart, our fire inspector. He and I have come up with what we think is about as good a solution as we're gonna get, aside from actually reducting that whole thing. We've asked him to increase the frequency of professional cleanings on his exhaust duct to once every quarter, which he jumped on readily, agreed, he's ready to go. So I think with y'all's blessing, we're happy with what he's proposing.
I'll make that motion to approve the variance with the added 4 cleanings a year, once per quarter.
All right, a motion and second. Is there any discussion or questions?
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Is it?
Sure.
You might want to consider looking at revisiting this if the tenancy changes in the future. Oh, yeah. If we get depending on what's going in there, the grease load could increase. Mm-hmm. And in that case, we may want to be able to reevaluate it at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that this is just for Dr. Whitaker's Pizza. And
Chris, are they going to submit those reports to you?
Yes, ma'am. They're actually going to submit them to the fire department, who will keep it with their inspection records.
Okay, great.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other conversation or question? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you for working with us. Presentation of Visit Oxford Action Plan for 2021.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I know this is long, so I'll try to be brief so that I don't take up too much of everyone's time.
This is all good news, so we are happy to hear it.
Hey, it is good news. No problems here. All right, so just to kind of start on the second page, an executive summary. I came to you, obviously, last year around November, December. I can't remember exactly when Mary Allen, of course, resigned, and I came into this position. So just wanted to kind of refocus after all that we've been dealing with the pandemic, with our new action plans. So we're going to remain outcome-driven and focused on making the best for our community here in Oxford, not just the hotels, but everyone, the retailers, restaurants, and this has become more important now more than ever, with the global pandemic kind of derailing our everyday jobs and making us become more of a support arm of the city rather than just a destination marketing organization. So we're considering ourselves more of a destination management organization at this point, and hope we can get back to more marketing later. But we do plan to keep the safety messaging front of mind. As you know, we did receive CARES Fund money, and everything that we are doing with our CARES Fund money has to explain the safety messaging. So we want to visit people, we want people to come back and visit when they're comfortable, and then we want them to know what all we are doing to keep them safe when they're here, which thank you to your leadership for having your strict guidelines, because it really has put us in a place to position to visitors and to small meetings and groups to come here, whereas other cities around us haven't had that luxury. So thank you. You've made it easier on us. So going on to page 3, our goals will remain the same: economic growth for the community, brand awareness, and maximizing our return on investment. And in your paper copy, unlike the one on the screen, you might see that St. Louis is in the wrong place. So I really like geography, but I missed that one. So it is a test market that we are working on. We've seen a lot of people going to our site from St. Louis digitally as we track the analytics. So we are testing that because it is in that drive market of 6 hours. So our primary markets that we will focus on will continue to be Atlanta, Birmingham, Nashville, Memphis, Dallas, Houston, and Jackson. We are scaling back our efforts this year on international travel, obviously, because we know that's less likely. So just putting kind of more eggs in the drive market basket, if you will. So that's all on page 3. On 4, so sales, as you know, we have a new sales and marketing manager, Nadia Thornton, who's doing a great job, even though her job has been completely refocused for what we originally kind of hired her to do. But she's doing a great job with all of our marketing efforts through our TRF funding, and we are starting to work on attracting those small meeting markets. So that's her main focus right now, as we believe that's really going to be what drives recovery. So you'll hear me talking a little bit more about that in a few pages. But so we will continue to focus on domestic and leisure travel. That's about 40% of our efforts. Meeting and conventions, 25%. And then in our industry, we call it SMERF, but sports, military, education, retiree, and family, that would be 25% of our efforts. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, international, 10%. And again, I know I won't go into all of the details, but moving along. So for on page 5, visitor services, we had to eliminate that position due to our lack of hotel motel income from the tax during the pandemic, and kind of going forward, we don't believe that we'll see that really back up until probably 2022. So we don't have that position right now, but we just kind of divided it amongst the rest of us and the staff, and we're still going to keep the visitor experience, obviously, front of mind. We have developed a lot of safety measures, QR codes for all of our brochures to eliminate touch points. The PPE that you have in front of you, that is some branded PPE that we were able to purchase through our TRF funding, or our tourism recovery funding. And we are giving that out to visitors and to meeting planners, and the conference center also has a lot of PPE that we've helped give them to host meetings. We're gonna keep using our lawn more. We have a lot of people who like to just come and use it, study, bring their coffee or their ice cream. So we're going to keep promoting that and using it for our kind of small pop-up events and art shows. We are doing something a little different with bucket lists, just to try to get people moving around town and not being in one spot. So those are kind of for people of all ages, and we mostly promote that through social media promotions. And then we have the double-decker bus that everybody still loves. So we're keeping that, but kind of shifting what we normally do. We're not doing our public tours. Instead, we are having the bus kind of parked in different places as a don't touch the bus, but take your picture. That allows us to get a lot of reposts and analytics through our social and digital formats. And then public relations, so we're gonna shift our focus a little bit on public relations, and like I mentioned before, we're gonna be pitching meetings and conventions markets more so than our general leisure travel. We're gonna do that through marketing, so we are gonna host this summer, if we are able, because of the pandemic, but we're gonna host a meeting planners familiarization tour. So we're gonna bring meeting planners from all over the Southeast region into Oxford, show them all of our meetings and facilities locations, because we are seeing that organizations and associations are ready to travel again as soon as they can. So we think that that is one of the best ways to drive recovery, especially for our midweek travel for the hotel and motel tax, as well as the food and beverage tax. So we are going to really be focusing on that, and again, using some of our tourism recovery funds to be able to host them this summer. And then we will continue to remain focused on regional media blitzes, and we're going to kind of do that with a co-op with our PR firm. We're going to kind of come together with some other customers that they have or clients, and then do kind of share the cost of all of that. So in other words, show travel writers that all of our assets, so that they have multiple stories, but just like kind of one travel. So they're not on airplanes as much and things like that, but can still get our story out. And it's very cost saving to us, which is important right now more than ever. And then the Film Commission, of course, we will remain focused on promoting all of our film resources through our Film Oxford website. And moving on to marketing. So again, Nadia is helping big time in this area, which has been huge relief for me and help. So she is working hard on ad designs with our CARES Act money. And just to kind of highlight some things that we've been able to do that are new to us through the CARES money, outdoor traditional billboard placements. So there's one as you're coming south from Memphis before you get to Batesville. And then there's also one in Tupelo, kind of right before you would get to the turnoff on Magnolia Way. So if you're in those areas, keep an eye out for them. And then we are doing streaming radio and OTT TV advertising. So that's online streaming TV or internet TV, which is something that we've never been able to do before. So that was exciting. And we get great analytics from that, and can even know if that person then later comes to visit through all the technology with smart devices. So that's exciting. We have a lot of new photos showing people in masks, showing all the safety precautions that the restaurants and meeting facilities have taken. And then we are working with Visit Mississippi on a co-op for Expedia, again, something that we've never had in our budget. So on to digital content. Hannah is really keeping things there happy. As you know, there's a lot going on right now, socially and culturally. So we have kept kind of a happy feel, and we hope to kind of stay out of those political issues and just make sure that people know that everyone's welcome here, that we're excited to have them. So she's done a great job of kind of turning the narrative a little bit more to happier things, and she'll continue to do that and foster relationships by engaging visitors, residents, retailers, and restaurants through social media. And we have found that our giveaways provide us with a great way to spotlight all of those different community partners. So we'll continue to do that as we go forward, and of course keeping the safety messages top of mind. And then on to page 9, in partnerships. Communication with our partners has never been more important, but it is also harder right now with not being able to be in meetings with people. So Jessica has kind of her work cut out for her, but she's on the phone all day or out visiting someone that she can visit or on a Zoom meeting. So she's doing a great job just keeping us and our restaurants and our retailers, hotels, community partners all informed. She's also continuing to do our Share Oxford Frontline Hospitality Training Program. So far, we have 300 certified hospitality professionals in Oxford, and that's across 30 businesses. And I know she's been working closely with the university's COVID team to make sure that they're aware of what people can do when they come here to Oxford to visit, as well as the safety measures. And last but not least, calendar of events. So as you know, smaller events due to the pandemic is kind of what we're focused on right now. Ones that we are making kind of happen in our office, or ones that we're working closely with our partners to pull off. Community resources are really important these days, so working closely with the Square Alliance, the Arts Council, as well as the Chamber in order to get people around town, moving around, but not in large groups. It's quite challenging, but we are keeping focused on that, and we have some really exciting things for the winter and for the holiday season, and a lot of advertising focused on people coming here to shop. So kind of driving the mayor's message home to shop local. And then partnership funding, of course, we have that as we do each year. This year we have $65,000. We've already started that process and have granted quite a bit to different events. The pie chart that you see over to the left is, of course, last year's funding, so you can just see how that's broken down by percentages. We are asking, what their COVID-19 protocols are if it is an in-person event, and so we're kind of working through that with our partnerships committee to make sure that we're not funding something that would not be safe. So that is it. I'm sorry, that was a lot all at one time. Do y'all have any questions or
I think that's great.
Good job.
Appreciate your enthusiasm during a time that promoting tourism is super difficult. Sure. And Kenny has been such a good partner to us at City Hall and helping us think through creative ways to keep people, keep them coming. So thank you for all of your hard work, and please share that with your staff as well.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Okay, next on our agenda is reviewing our current COVID-19 guidelines. I'm going to ask Jimmy Allgood, our Emergency Management Director, to come up and give us just kind of an update on numbers. We don't have any changes to propose tonight, but we have continually said that we will keep this on our agenda every meeting so that we can gives us an opportunity to update you on the numbers at that time, and so I'll turn it over to Jimmy to do that.
Okay, for today, statewide, the state had 730 new cases with 31 deaths. For Lafayette County, we had 9 new cases today for a total of 2,426, and over the past week or so, we've actually seen our active cases starting to drop. Today, we have 86 active cases in the report from the State Health Department. So we've seen a slow drop from the 100 level down. Now we're below 100. Mm-hmm. So it looks like wearing the mask and taking the precautions are starting to pay off when we see it in the graphics.
That's right, and I know that many of you probably saw the governor issued yesterday, I believe for 9 counties, 8 or 9. He put the mask mandate back in place for those counties. The ones closest to us are Lee County and DeSoto County, where they are seeing a large rise in not only positive cases, but in hospitalizations. I spoke with Bill Henning, the hospital administrator, earlier today. I always check in with him often to kind of get updates. We see the numbers each day, but I called him to say, what are you feeling like? And he said today we had 19 COVID patients in the hospital. It has been fluctuating for the past 2 weeks from about 17 to 22 each day. For those of you, I know some people probably check that out on the Department of Health website, but He said that maybe 3 weeks ago, they had a high of 27, so just even at the high, there were, I think today there were more than 50 hospital beds available, and I think there were 7 ICU beds available on the chart today. And so our numbers are still looking really good. So we get the question, okay, we're doing great, why don't you stop this mask mandate? Why do we have the governor's executive orders, and why are we following those? Well, there's a reason that Lafayette County doesn't look like some of the counties that are surrounding us, and that's because, in my belief, we have kept a plan in place since April, and it has paid off, and we are seeing the fruits of our labor, and the inconvenience of a mask has allowed us to be able to open our businesses without having to scale back. And so as we stand right now, for our restaurants and bars, we've gotten quite a few questions on this, so I'm gonna just say this publicly for anybody that has missed it. Our restaurants and bars now go by the governor's executive order 1525, and so there are only 8 restrictions in place, other than the one that we have that is different is that we still require a face covering inside. So as people enter and are seated, as they get up to go to the bathroom, they should have on a mask. Other than that, they go exactly by the governor's order, which is they had to update their floor plans to ensure at least 6 feet of separation between each party or group, whether dining indoor or outdoor. That's been in place since April. That's not new. Limit party sizes to a maximum of 10 persons per table. We were at 6 prior to the governor's order, so that was an increase of 4 people per table. Appropriate PPE shall be worn by all employees based on their duties and responsibilities and adherence to federal, state, and local regulations and guidelines. Every employee who comes in contact with customers shall be provided a cloth mask and shall be required to wear that mask while on duty. That's not a change. Customers shall be screened for illness prior to entry. Alcohol may be served only to customers that are seated, and there's been some confusion there, I think. That has also been in place since April. With our very first Serving Oxford Safely guidelines, we required that to be served alcohol, you must be seated at a table. That remains in place now by the governor's order. Alcohol may not be sold between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Self-service buffets and food stations are prohibited, and cafeteria-style buffets and food stations and self-service drink stations are permitted if they are worker-served. So, just wanted to go through that list, as that is a question that we have gotten, and I know Jimmy has gotten often over the past few days, and so those are the guidelines that are in place for our restaurants. Does anyone on the board have a question for Jimmy? Or any comment about our COVID guidelines? I don't have anything to suggest as a change. But I'm happy to hear from anybody that has anything. Okay, great. Thank you, Jimmy. At our last special called meeting, the board asked Chief McCutcheon to come back at this meeting and give an update on any citations that had been issued to bars and restaurants, and so I'm going to turn it over to him and let him do that.
Good evening. So since our last meeting on Monday, October the 12th, our department has issued 8 citations. Of those citations, we've issued 2 to the Annex, 2 to Rafters, 1 to Harrison's, the Library, Roosters, and Grill House. Each of those citations were for allowing patrons to stand up. And so just to give you a little context with that, when we met after the meeting, I've met with half of these restaurant or bars right after our Monday meeting to discuss what that looked like, and that is multiple people standing up and no one addressing that from a proactive standpoint. So those citations were all for the same thing, and again, it was for multiple individuals being up and being served, as you see in the pictures.
So Mayor, is basically our citations are general, are they all for the one thing that is different than the governor and what we do?
No, sir.
No, none of them are.
These are all from the governor's orders.
The governor's order states that you must be seated to be served, that everyone must be seated at a table. that is in a bar. No one's allowed to stand and congregate. And so standing, I mean, you're allowed to get up and go to the bathroom, obviously. You're allowed to get up and leave, but you're not allowed to get up and stand around, and you're not allowed to be served at a bar.
What was when you said hours is different?
That we require a face covering when you enter the restaurant and when you get up to walk to the restroom. If you're walking around, you're supposed to have on a mask. That's the only difference. But that's not what they've been issued citations for.
So Jeff, when you spoke with the owners, did they seem to understand that this is the governor's orders? Do they know what you're talking about when you say they have to sit down?
Yes, ma'am. You know, in their discussions, they would rather see individual cited, and the issue with that is, we will, and we have in other businesses, you just gotta be proactive in letting us know. You know, we can't go in and police your people if in this situation, you've got multiple people standing up and no one is actively trying to get them to comply. We've done it where there's been multiple businesses called and said, hey, we have customers coming in that won't honor the mask, or we've went to address that with the individuals, not the businesses.
So if they have a customer who won't comply with their request to sit down, or is walking around without a mask and won't put one on, then they can call you and you'll deal with the individual.
That's right.
But when you have a group like this, and, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, just like any other health safety for any other restaurant or any other bar, if you come in without shoes, the bar or restaurant has a duty to ask them to leave.
Right.
It's a health safety regulation in the city. If they won't leave, they're trespassing. I mean, it's a private place. They have every right to ask folks to leave if they're not complying.
Sure.
And so it's not just that if we walk in the door and people are standing up, they can say, go tell them they've got to put on their mask.
Right.
They should have asked them to leave, and if they're a trespasser, we'll be glad to help out. We don't ask them to take up arms or toss them out if they won't leave, but if they got a trespasser who's breaking the laws, and they are too by having people standing up without masks, they should ask for our help. That's not what's happening here.
Right.
Well, and like Chief said, some have asked for the help, but those are not the ones that have been issued citations. And, you know, we've gotten that question several times about, can you write tickets to the actual people that are in the bar? And we could, but we don't have the manpower to stand in every bar to watch to see if people are not cooperating. So it's got to be, we're contacted by the restaurant.
And we shouldn't be doing that anyway. I mean, the bar owner should be managing their own business and making sure that their patrons comply.
That's right.
So it's up to the board to, you'll ask for Jeff to come back and give you a report. So how do you want to proceed?
At the last meeting, we announced that we were going to revoke the outdoor licenses of people who, after our meeting, and they were given fair notice, we were going to revoke their outdoor licenses. So I think that's what we should do, and it should be a permanent revoking of the license. If we do this again in the spring, then everybody should start off with a clean slate.
Are the outdoor areas the problem?
No, sir. It's typically all indoors. And I mean, it's what you see in some of these pictures as they scroll, it's very similar to that. We've had very little issue with outdoors. In the locations that have been cited, I don't know that there's a lot of outdoor activity. The businesses that we have seen that are actively using their outdoor dining, they're compliant. I mean, they're doing a really good job with it.
You know, our goal in establishing the outdoor dining was to allow restaurants to be able to accommodate higher capacity. Since capacity is limited indoors, the folks who are seated in the outdoor dining are in addition to the capacity that they can hold. They aren't counted in what their indoor capacity is. So that was, you know, just remind you, that was our goal, was to help them have expanded capacity and make more money by being able to seat people in a safer environment outside.
So am I the only one who has a thought on this?
Well, I mean, I think that what you said, Janice, is exactly right. But I think one of the reasons that we were kind of going back and forth on it was that we had a big question about whether it should be 1 or 2.
That's right.
From that point, because I know at least I said it's gonna be easy to find 1. You know, I don't have a problem, you know, I just don't think if somebody got 1, I'm not for just closing them, taking theirs away, but that was what I was saying in the first place. So, I mean, I'm not even gonna say anything else, I'll just let everybody else talk, but that was the whole reason that I brought up the thing about I hate to do it with just 1.
But some of these have had 2 or more before.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, if you think it's 2, then I understand.
Can you tell me which ones have the outdoor dining? I know some of these do not.
Of the ones that have gotten citations, is that what you're asking?
That's a good question.
Harrison's does not, everyone else on the list does.
I think we should move forward with what we said in our last meeting. How many chances are we going to give them? And that's not fair to the businesses that are following the plan.
Yeah. I mean, I thought we said at our last meeting that starting after our meeting that it was 1 violation, 1 citation. Did we not? Am I mistaken? I know we didn't make a motion, and we should have, but I thought that was the understanding. What did you understand we said, Jeff?
I think we discussed revisiting what that looked like in a week, but I don't know that we put 1 on it.
Did we not?
I think individually we wanted to look at each case.
Okay.
Do we have images from each one of these?
That's
Yeah.
each of the ones who have received.
That one's the library.
Okay.
That is Rafters, I believe. That may be a second.
That's the annex.
The annex there. That is Grill House. You got a patron coming out. Harrison's.
Wait a minute, go back. What do you mean you got a patron coming out? Because he doesn't have a mask on?
Yes, sir. He was one of the ones coming out, exiting, which was the multiple people standing.
And that's the Grill House.
Yes. I believe that is.
That's the annex.
Is that the annex?
Yeah.
I think it's Raptors, but sure. How do y'all want to move forward?
You get 2 on here that already got, they received 2 citations, and
Yeah.
one of them received 2 citations in 1 day, the other received 2 citations back to back day, or 1 evening.
That's correct.
You know, we did the outdoor dining to help the businesses, and I think that was our goal, and the outdoor part is the safer part. You know, I understand, you know, they're doing, I would say, the best they can because they're dealing with a different crowd. I mean, I hate to give that outdoor space up because I think it's been well received. But, you know, the ones that are just multiple violators, and if they're just not trying, I mean, that's one thing. But if some are trying, you know, I hate to do one and done. That's my thought on it.
Well, rather than us doing nothing, why don't we now at least revoke the licenses of the businesses that have gotten 2 citations?
I'll go along with that. That motion?
Yeah, that's a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so there's a motion to revoke the outdoor dining privileges of businesses who have received more than one. Is that what our policy?
Since
Since October the
Yeah.
12th.
Yeah.
October the 12th was our meeting where we discussed this.
Yeah.
All right, so there are 2 of them.
That's right. There are
And-
2 businesses that have received 2 each
Right.
since October 12th.
Now, we're not starting anew. The ones that have, that we're not revoking, that have citations, if they receive another one, then we'll revoke their
Yeah,
license.
I think it's from October 12th. I think
From
we'll just go
October
from
12th,
there.
yeah.
Oh, do we have to have another meeting to revoke, if there's another one on this list that gets a second citation, do we have to have a meeting to revoke that?
I think you do. I think the license is between the holder and the city, and I'm not comfortable sort of proactively revoking that license. You can revoke it for any reason, or just, you're within your grounds to revoke it, but I would not revoke it prospectively.
We could do that with a call-in meeting too.
We could, sure.
Ms. Janison, also the ones who have single citations after this meeting, we will send an email to make sure they're notified. The next one could result.
Okay, that's great. Although I think everybody knows that by now, that we're looking at that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to revoke licenses for people that have more than one, so that would be Rafters and the Annex. A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I do have a question though, I mean, we didn't set a policy last time, we just kind of said, and I think what we're saying here is, we still don't have that policy, but they know that that we're gonna look at them after they get another one. Because I guess they always have the opportunity to come and refute it or whatever.
Well, should we make a motion that we're going to revoke licenses when there are 2 citations?
I mean, that's a
I think what we did say is
Say
that
we wanna check out each one.
if they wanted to come and appeal it,
Yeah,
they can. So I think we
Right.
still allow them, I wouldn't set the policy, I think we allow them to come and defend themselves or defend the actions.
Well, if that's the case, you have it
Yeah.
tonight. I wouldn't do that going forward unless you're gonna invite someone to, speak to you for a couple of minutes tonight. You've got folks here tonight.
Okay, can we finish that vote before we move to something else? Because,
I think we do.
well, I'd
did.
not said, does anybody vote nay? I didn't know if everybody voted
Nobody
yes or
did.
not. Okay, great. All right, so then Alderman Bailey, do you wish to give the 2 that are up for being revoked the opportunity to speak? Is that,
I mean, I don't know if we can go back, we've already voted on it.
I mean, I guess you could revoke it.
Amend your agenda
Yeah.
to add a
Okay.
motion.
Yeah,
Well, I
If you
mean,
wanna do
is
that.
anybody here tonight?
I don't know. Hiram, are you here to speak on their behalf? Sorry, just to call you out from the back row, but I assume you are. If you want to come speak, come on, if you don't mind coming up here, would be great.
Molly, walking, let me, real quick, on the grill house, I mean, that's not the same citation as the other ones that received. That was somebody walking away from their table without a mask. What we're giving citations for is groups of people standing.
And that's why I asked that
Oh,
question,
okay.
actually.
It was multiple people. That was the best image that we could get on body camera. Once we stepped in, they had scattered, and once you get inside there was no video that you could have seen. That was the reason we used that one picture.
And that's another reason I wish that y'all would do what you're doing, which is decide that the next time, you could get a single violation next time that is so gross to you all that you decide to pull the license. You have that authority, so, but it is why you ought to consider it deliberatively.
Okay, do we need to amend the agenda to let Hiram speak on behalf?
I mean, if you want to make a motion to amend the agenda to allow the attorney for Annex and Raptors to speak.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Hiram, have the mic.
Thank you, Mayor and
Yeah.
Board. I wasn't expecting any type of vote or anything tonight based on the agenda. I realize things changed. I would ask you to reconsider and at least give Annex and Raptors and anybody else who's received a citation since the 12th a chance to be heard personally. I've got a few issues from a legal standpoint just of looking at this. One, I think I don't know if y'all have ever looked at, but there are other penalties in play here. This is a criminal charge. It's a misdemeanor. Under the city statute or the city ordinance, it's punishable by a $1,000 fine, each citation, $1,000 fine, and up to 90 days in jail. And all of these people have the right to due process and to defend themselves in that. So what happens if they get found not guilty down the road and you've revoked their license? Okay, I think that's a big concern. I realize that you have the authority to revoke for any reason, but let's think this through and be reasonable about it. The other thing is, in the Oxford order, y'all are asking private individuals, private businesses to police and to enforce a criminal statute, a criminal implication here for whether it's mask in violation of the city order, whether it's people standing up, whether it's anything. And so there's a real murky area here that I've got great concerns about. I think that comes into play. And so what these...
Hiram, I'm gonna ask a dumb question. Is it different than asking you to patrol or police who's 21 and who's 18?
I think it is, because you're giving them citations because they didn't take a certain action to enforce your rule.
Doesn't and I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. We have not talked prior to this, so but ABC gives the bar a ticket, do they not, for serving underage?
It's my understanding
people?
that most tickets go to the individual for MIPs and for underage.
So you don't know that any bars received a ticket for serving underage individuals?
No, that does happen, absolutely, I believe.
Okay.
I'm not saying that, but they also, I would say the vast majority, I don't know where the chief went, they may be able to address that, at least from the city perspective. I would say the majority of them, and what we see are the individuals with the MIPs themselves. We're not seeing that here either. Look at it, look at the crowds in these places. There's a lot of people. Y'all mentioned, I think that either Jimmy or the chief mentioned that they don't have the personnel to send around every single business and police it and really, really go hard and force it. Well, these people...
We've got an ordinance in place that they have to have enough security to cover and take care of their baselines by city ordinance.
I understand that, but these things happen really fast. Someone stands up to go to the bathroom with no mask on, they may not have had a chance to even get there. The police roll in and give a ticket.
Well, I don't think looking at that picture, you could say that somebody got up to go to the bathroom and the police came in and gave them a ticket.
Who did they give a ticket to in this? I see a big crowd of people standing. I also see masks. I don't see anyone without a mask.
It's because they're standing, it's not because they don't.
But if they have a mask, can't they stand? They just can't have the alcohol.
No, they cannot stand.
This is the disconnect a little bit. Let's take both these points. One, you are not a criminal forum. You're not deciding a criminal matter. You're not imposing a fine. And what you do will have no res judicata effect on what the judge does. What you have done is offered a license to those who comply with the city's guidelines and ordinances. You can take it back if you think they're not. You can take it back if you think it's difficult to see inside that business because there's a wall there and you can't see what's happening. You can take it back for any reason or no reason. The issue of standing, Hiram will do a great job arguing this in criminal court as to whether or not that state statute and our following of it precludes their standing. But this is a restaurant. This is not a bar. And to me, as I read that executive order, it's very clear. It anticipates tables of no more than 6, expanded now to no more than 10. You can't serve people standing up. They're supposed to be seated in groups of no more than 10 or 6. They're not seated. And again, whether or not our city judge agrees that that's a violation, that's up to the city judge, and they can argue that. But there aren't bars and restaurants under Mississippi law. There are restaurants. This is what a restaurant looks like when they are standing rather than seated at their restaurant tables. We provided them additional room so they could spread people out and sit them at more restaurant tables outside. But that's That's not what we're seeing here. And again, I understand your argument, Hiram. I disagree with it. I think the executive order that we're following, and it specifically says restaurants and bars shall do this. Not we shall ticket people, but that restaurants have to comply with these seating standards. So it's a different question whether or not he can beat the rap on that. That's up to you. But
that's not really what we're here to decide. We are deciding whether.
I don't mean to be argumentative.
No, I hear it. You know, I'm good with that.
I'm explaining my concerns with what's going on, basically,
right,
on behalf of my clients. I think that they should be given an opportunity, especially because the last meeting, and they were actually here, the discussion that we understood was that something was going to be put in place as far as guidance on if it's 1 violation, 2 violations, or whatever. So I think it's premature to revoke the permit today. And thank you for letting me address you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hiram. Okay, any discussion by the board? All right. We will move along then to our next item, which is presentation of information regarding property ownership of land on which the Confederate monument is located. You will first hear from our city attorney, Pope Millette, who's going to give us a summary of the information that the board considered regarding the ownership of the piece of property on which the Confederate monument is located. So I'll turn it over to Pope and let him do that.
What you have before you is a picture of the downtown Lafayette County Courthouse. And we put it up there just to provide a little context of how this issue fell into the lap of Bart first, and then me working with Bart in his office. In the first week of July, after the county voted to keep the statue, the city was contacted with pretty much this picture, which comes from the tax assessor's map.
Actually, that was June 15th.
Oh, June 15th. I thought it was the July 6th or so that I.
June 15th.
At any rate, they were contacted after the vote and sent a copy of the tax assessor's map showing this octagon and showing the shadow of the Confederate memorial to the south, the bottom of the picture, outside of that octagon, with the suggestion being that if the county tax assessor's map shows the memorial outside of that octagon, then it must mean that that is not on county property. And the county tax assessor's map doesn't establish meets and bounds or survey lines or ownership in that way. And so while it did raise the question, this is really the picture that I think got the city asked to look into it, it didn't answer the question. So with that, Bart and I and others within the city began to look, and the summary I'm going to give you is not a legal finding, it is not a legal opinion or legal advice, but it is the facts that we found, and not all of them. There are other facts that I'll mention at the end that I'm not including here because they're not definitive, but these were sort of the central facts as to who owns the property on which the statue itself sits. Not the statue itself, which I'll discuss, but the property on which it sits. The facts that we found, and that I'm going to include today, were in A History of Lafayette County, Mississippi, John Sabatka Jr.'s book, The Heritage of Lafayette County, Mississippi by the Skipworth Historical and Genealogical Society, the minutes of the Lafayette County Board of Police, which was the predecessor of the Board of Supervisors, minutes of the Lafayette County Board of Supervisors, the minutes of the City Board of Aldermen, the Oxford Eagle. We also looked at county traditional property records, although there's some limitations there that I'll mention, city records that we could put our hands on, other maps, adopted official maps, photos we found primarily online or in these references I've already mentioned to you. And we talked to History and Archives. They didn't have a lot of pertinent information related to this. We found that the county and we both had asked for more information on designated landmarks and property ownership. They didn't speak very clearly to the property ownership issue. But a quick history, in February of 1836, Lafayette County was created by the legislature from property that was acquired by the state through the Chickasaw Cession. In 1836, the town of Oxford, which is now the city, was established as the county seat of Lafayette County from 50 acres that was given to the Lafayette County Board of Police by, I believe, 3 entrepreneurs who had purchased the 50 acres. The Board of Police, as I said, was the precursor to the Board of Supervisors. That property was then divided into lots and auctioned off. A lot of it was auctioned off on sale over time. There was a depression, deep recession or depression at the time. A lot of those notes weren't paid or weren't timely paid. And the records that showed those sales are very spotty. They were burned, those records were lost. Some deeds you can find back in the record, but usually those were copies of the deeds that later after the war were placed back in the record. Some of the property was retained by the County Board of Police for the purpose of establishing a public square and location of the county courthouse. From 1840 until the town was burned in 1864, a courthouse was located in the middle of the public square in downtown Oxford, basically where it is now. After the Civil War, on May 7th, 1868, during the Reconstruction government, the Board of Police, by contract attached to its minutes and in its minutes, ceded in fee simple, and the word is ceded, C-E-D-E-D, a portion of the county property known as the public or court square. That's what they called it, and that gives rise to a little bit of its own ambivalence. In the middle of which the courthouse had been situated before it was burned, to the town of Oxford, with the condition that the town, quote, suitably enclose and ornament and beautify said square and make it a pleasure ground to be open to the public for recreation or innocent amusement. The contract provided the town could make needful rules and regulations for the protection of said grounds, and it assessed proper fines and penalties against parties committing waste or in any way depredating upon the same. The contract further provided, quote, that if the county should ever want said public square for the purpose of erecting a courthouse, the said corporate authorities of the town of Oxford shall convey said public square back to the county, provided the county return to the corporate authorities the money expended in repairing same. So that's what happens in 1868. Over the next year or two, the courthouse is operated not in the center of the square, it's operated in another building. But I think in 1869 or 70, there's some county minutes that show that the county was designing a new courthouse and getting it bid out. The same day, May 7th, 1868, the town of Oxford accepted that contract. And then in the minutes of the Board of the Police, Board of Supervisors, and Board of Aldermen, there are or is no indication as to whether the county ever requested that the property be conveyed back to the county for the purpose of building a courthouse. Whether payments were ever made to the town as reimbursement for repairs made to the pleasure ground, or whether the town ever formally conveyed property to the county for the location of the courthouse. Nevertheless, by early 1872, the county had rebuilt the present courthouse in the middle of the public square where it sits now, and thereafter fenced the current octagonal grounds that you see in that picture, essentially exactly, or as close as part I could determine, it looks just like that octagon there. The fenced area does not, and apparently has never included the area on which the Confederate monument is located, and if you think about it, that's natural. We're talking about 1872, and there was no thought at the time that there would be any additional area. In February 1906, the Board of Aldermen granted a petition for the Camp of Confederate Veterans, this is the city Board of Aldermen, for the Camp of Confederate Veterans to allow the Whitney Show Company, a fair, to exhibit its show on the public square for 1 week and exempted the company from their privilege tax. In May of 1907, and I say that, it's one of those facts that I put in there, but it's not very definitive. It just shows that the city had some control, granting some privilege over the public square, but it's not much more defined than that in granting or requiring a privilege license. On May 3rd, 07, the Board of Supervisors minute reflect that the board agreed to pay $1,500 toward the cost of the Confederate monument. It had been in the papers, there'd been discussion of it, and the board awarded a contract for laying concrete walks around the monument on the south side of the courthouse yard. The corresponding Board of Aldermen minutes are silent as to whether any permission was requested or whether any was granted by the town for the erection of the monument at this location. It's just silent. There's no discussion of it, no asking of permission, no granting of it that we could find in either county board or city board minutes. This next fact, I think, sort of goes toward the ownership of the monument that there's been a lot written about and a lot discussed about. In March 1911, Lafayette County Camp number 752 of the United Confederate Veterans of Oxford purportedly, according to papers, conveyed to the LQC Lamar Camp number 220 of the United Sons of the Confederate Veterans of Oxford, quote, the Confederate monument now standing at the south gate of the county courthouse on the public square in Oxford. Again, there's a little language for everybody there. It talks about the south gate, talks about public square. So it's, again, not definitive fact, but when you hear people talk about having a deed to the monument, I think they're often talking about that granting of the actual title to the monument rather than any grant by the county or the city of the property on which the monument sits. The official survey map adopted by the city of Oxford in 1939 identifies the county courthouse much like this picture and the grounds in its current octagonal shape. The survey appears to accurately locate the courthouse and grounds where it now sits. The official map also, the 1939 map adopted by the Board of Aldermen, also identifies the Confederate monument. It uses words to identify them both on this hand-drawn map for both the courthouse and the monument, and shows it as separate from the courthouse, shows its location outside of that octagonal shape of the grounds. The county tax assessor maps, as you see before you, show the same courthouse and grounds as assessed to the county. The monument located outside the octagon does not show it as being assessed to Lafayette County. Since the completion of the courthouse back in 1872, the county has generally maintained the grounds inside the octagon, and the city has maintained the adjacent sidewalks and streets, generally speaking. Although the funding of that sometimes travels between the two a little bit. There's some assistance by the county or the city for some of those things. In 1960, Board of Aldermen city minutes reflect that the Lafayette County Sheriff requested from the city a parking space next to the monument. In the early 2000s, the Board of Supervisors paid for the installation of cannonballs around the base of the monument. In the 2010s, the county and the city had discussions about the metering of parking spaces around the courthouse grounds, outside the fence and the sidewalk. And the county asked that certain of those parking spaces be reserved for county court or law enforcement personnel. Ultimately, there was no request for a court decision or decision between the county and the city as to who actually owned those things, but the city chose not to place any parking meters in the parking places adjacent to the courthouse grounds. And then recent Board of Supervisors minutes in the last 5 years, or perhaps a little more or less, reflect that the board has issued permits for assemblies. The county board has issued permits for assemblies that have occurred on the sidewalks surrounding the monument. I don't really want to provide commentary beyond that, which I gave you with the facts. These are what we found. We found discussions of watering the roads or discussions of paving. The lore within Rotary is that Rotary paved the square when it was first paved in 1921 or 22, or they contributed to it. So again, none of those things are really definitive. They almost define the issue instead of answer it, but
right.
Those are the facts that we thought were important.
We thank you for summarizing what was about this thick into that amount of information, Pope. That is so helpful, and we thank you. In hopes of clarifying for the public the process that we've been through, I believe that the statement that I prepared is representative of the beliefs of this board and summarizes the process that has been followed as well as the intentions of this board moving forward. On June 15th, 2020, City Clerk Ashley Atkinson received the first citizen inquiry regarding the ownership of the property on which the Confederate monument sits. This inquiry was forwarded to County Administrator Lisa Carwile. Multiple inquiries of the same nature were received by the City of Oxford through social media and emails following the initial inquiry. The City of Oxford has for many years operated under the assumption that the courthouse lawn, including the statue, were on property owned by Lafayette County. This was not an issue instigated by the City of Oxford Board of Aldermen, but in response to citizen inquiries. For several months, city staff and attorneys researched to find any definitive answer to the question of property ownership, as you've just heard by Pope Millet's presentation. The Board of Aldermen believed that engaging in a conversation with the Lafayette County Board of Supervisors was the most effective way to determine this issue. Therefore, on July 29th, 2020, a letter was sent to the Lafayette County Board of Supervisors requesting a meeting, either informally between a few representatives from each board, or a more formal meeting with both boards in attendance. The letter went unanswered. After discussions regarding research available and still finding no definitive answer, the Board of Aldermen issued a second letter to the Board of Supervisors on August 18th, 2020, detailing some of the research that had been discovered and again requesting the opportunity to sit down and discuss the issue. The Board of Supervisors responded with a letter informing the Board of Aldermen that they did not wish to discuss the property issue. So at this point, the Board of Aldermen believes that there is information that suggests the property on which the Confederate monument sits is questionable, but has no definitive answer to this issue. With no survey available that the city has uncovered, and with notice from the Board of Supervisors stating that they are not willing to discuss the issue and provide additional evidence, this board is really left with two options: conclude that there is no definitive answer and move to other issues, or the Board of Aldermen could bring a lawsuit to seek to have a court declare, under the facts discovered, that the property upon which the statue sits is the city's. Knowing a lawsuit would cause division between the two boards that would result in irreversible damage from which our community would suffer as a whole. The board voted 4-3 not to pursue a lawsuit. I believe the majority of the Board of Aldermen would support moving the monument to an alternate location had it been conclusively determined that it was on city property. The intention of the Board of Aldermen at this time is to move forward and address other important issues in our community, but will remain committed to discussing this issue with the Board of Supervisors in the event they reconsider. Further discussion of this issue without the involvement of the Board of Supervisors would be unproductive and not entertained by the Board of Aldermen.
Mayor, I think this accurately depicts what's going on, and I'll make a motion to adopt this statement.
I'll second.
All right, are there any comments?
Mayor, I also like to make a motion to affirm the Board of Aldermen would support moving this Confederate statue to an alternate location had it been conclusively determined that it was on city property.
Okay, well, I think we have to deal with the first motion and second before we move to a second motion. So the first motion is by Alderman Morgan that that statement is reflective, in fact, of the process that the board has gone through and of their position. And was there a second? You seconded? All right. So any other comments on that motion? All right. If not, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. So then, Keisha, you can make your motion, which is, one more, if you'll state it again, please.
That the Board of Aldermen, we will support moving the statue to an alternate location had it been determined it was sitting on city property.
Okay.
And I second it.
All right. Are there any questions or discussion?
Is this, oh, we're talking about actually making we're talking about making a motion on something that we don't know whether or not it is. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, if somebody came here and said, I want to buy a piece of property, but I need a vote on how y'all would vote, do we typically vote on something speculative?
You don't typically, you can't, I mean, there's nothing that precludes you, you can make a motion in a second, vote on about anything. It's not, it would not be binding. What you do today, you can change your mind, you're an elected official, you can have different information, but it doesn't keep you from voting on the issue. But yes, it is about, as I understand the motion, it's about an event that if something had happened, would you have
Right.
done this? That's what you're being asked.
It's just affirming that statement that's in the mayor's report.
We've already affirmed that statement.
Not,
No.
we
No, we
have
did.
not affirmed the one statement in there about a majority of the aldermen would,
We all voted to affirm the statement.
No, we voted 4-3 that we wouldn't pursue lawsuit.
But it also states that I believe the majority of the board would support the movement of the monument, so we just voted for that statement.
who is the majority?
So we have a motion and a second that we still need to vote on, but I'm gonna let conversation go till, I mean, if you have any other further comments or questions, then.
Just because I don't really have a problem, but just because I don't think we normally would vote on something that is speculative, I'll make a motion to table that motion until we find out whether or not it is.
Whether it's what? John?
Whether or not it is on city property if it ever comes up again.
That isn't what the statement says. It's just an affirmation.
Right, I understand that, but I still can make a motion to table the motion.
That's correct.
I'll second that.
I need some Robert's Rules of Order help.
I think if you get a majority vote, you can table the motion.
Before you vote on it, you table the motion. Okay, sorry, this one's a new one for me. Okay, so then we have a motion and a second to table.
And then there would be discussion on this intervening.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to table. Sorry, I should have brushed up on my rules. And there's a motion and a second to table the motion. So now questions or comments regarding the motion to table the motion.
How long are we tabling it?
Until we find out more definitive.
But in the letter, it says that we're not going to discuss it until.
No, it's my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order is tabled until the person who tabled it takes it off the table.
That's correct.
And when will you take it off the table, John?
I don't know.
So we're leaving the community not really knowing how we feel about moving that
No, I think
statute.
I think it says it right there that a majority would vote.
What does that mean? Does that mean that you
It
would?
means it would be moved. I think this board already knows how I feel. When I said it in my original statement, I just don't think we have to.
Reissue the statement.
We spent a lot of time on the statement.
I call the question.
All right, so then the vote is on tabling the motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, so the vote is 4-3 to table the motion. All right, so that moves us to item 12A, and we'll invite Billy Cruz up. Hey, Billy.
Hey, Mayor. Thank y'all for allowing me to speak tonight before the board.
Absolutely.
Some of what I may say may not be quite as germane at this moment as it was before the recent discussion, but I think nonetheless it's important to say.
Do you mind moving that microphone to your mouth just so that people that are watching this on
Sure.
video can see it? Thank you.
Sure. I'm Billy Cruz. I'm a resident of Ward 1 for the past 7 years. My wife Catherine is here tonight. Some of you may know her as a volunteer painter of city street signs. I'm also joined by Marion Barksdale, a resident of Ward 3, parent and former Oxford School Board member and chair. I invited several others to join us tonight on short notice when I learned I'd be able to speak today. Unfortunately, Dr. David Cole, whom many of you know as a student, professor, and administrator at the university, had to fly to Boston today and couldn't join us. Local business owner John Currents was en route to Little Rock when I reached him this morning and asked that I share his support. And I'd also invited retired Episcopal Bishop Duncan Gray III to join us, but he's chairing an international Zoom meeting as we speak. We could be joined by hundreds and perhaps thousands who have voiced their interest in relocating the statue that's been in the middle of our town for 113 years. On a personal note, I want to express my appreciation for your public service as elected leaders in our community. My family moved to Oxford in 1966 when I was 10 years old. My father served on this board from 1977 to 81 after serving as chair of the Oxford Park Commission. And during his tenure, the city government helped lead the effort to develop the first Oxford Activity Center and the construction of the first municipal swimming pool in Mississippi after school integration. I was proud of his service in those roles as a child and a student growing up here. Another perhaps relevant note of self-introduction for those of you who do not know me. Just 50 years ago this past January, during the middle of my 8th grade year, we integrated schools in Oxford. That singular event has influenced my entire life and perspective. Imagine, before that date, I and all other students in Oxford went to school predominantly with students of the same race. I would not have met my friend Michael Thompson, who's also here with me this evening. He was my classmate who became my lifelong friend. He too returned to Oxford and is now a local realtor. I would not have known half the people in this town as equals without that legal and culture-changing commitment by city leaders in that day. Coach Ulysses S. Howell, former board member for whom you've named the new Oxford Activity Center, was one of my coaches during those early years of change and improvement in our society. My bond of friendship with Michael Thompson, Coach Howell, and others I grew up with in a post-integration society have made me a better informed and committed person to continue change and improvement in my hometown, including the relocation of this statue. My goal in requesting to speak this evening really is to hold a mirror up to each of you as elected officials, and in some ways to hold you accountable for your decision not to pursue a resolution to the issue of the Confederate statue positioned in the center of our community. Here's a summation of what I understand through your action and inaction. There is some historical and legal evidence that the city may own the property on which the Confederate statue is located, though clearly it's not definitive. There is limited evidence offered by the county in its letter on September 8th of its ownership. And as I understand it, and I've heard expressed tonight, a majority of elected officials have indicated support for relocation of the statue if the city did or does in fact own the property. But at your October 6th meeting, whose minutes just became public before this meeting, 4 members of the board have indicated they're not willing to use their legitimate authority to address this unresolved property issue. The city's discussion of this significant issue of community interest has been conducted largely until tonight in executive sessions and without full transparency and public engagement from my perspective as a citizen. If that is a fair summary, and I believe it to be, I would ask the board, notwithstanding its actions just taken, that you reflect on those actions again. We want to thank the 3 elected leaders, city leaders, Alderman Preston Taylor, Alderman Janice Antonell, and Alderman Keisha Howell Atkinson, who voted to pursue a resolution to this property dispute. I also want to thank Mayor Tannehill for making her stand on the statute publicly known several months ago. To my Alderman Rick Addy, Alderman Mark Hulsey, Alderman Jason Bailey, and Alderman John Morgan, we respectfully ask you to do the right thing for all citizens of Oxford in pursuit of progress by changing your vote. We strongly believe the entire board collectively and individually should walk the walk, not talk the talk, and take decisive action to relocate the Confederate statue from the heart of our city, if possible. Taking action for what's best for the community in your role as elected leaders is important to the continued growth and progress of our community and county. There are at least 5 reasons we ask you to reconsider your vote in executive session on October 6th, and I guess your subsequent vote today, because it's the right thing to do. Public displays on government property should reflect the interest of all citizens. Symbols from an era of racism do not honor all citizens. And secondly, relocation is a modest proposal, not a radical action. To the best of my historical knowledge, the Civil War is not the central and most important historical event in Oxford and Lafayette County, as the statue's present location would suggest. Thirdly, we would suggest that now is the time for action. Oxford leaders should join the actions of our university to relocate its Confederate monument and the state legislature's retirement of the Confederate emblem on our state flag, former state flag. And perhaps most germane, property disputes happen all the time in communities. This dispute can be resolved in court since the 2 parties are unable to resolve it on their own. Legal action is a legitimate means toward a greater community purpose and good. I mean, my backdoor neighbor, the dean of the accounting school, and I had different descriptions of our property. We were able to come to a reasonable conclusion about that and resolve that. But had we not been able to, we would have taken it wherever you have to take it to resolve any property dispute. Finally, this issue is not going away. It's not going away. Y'all have indicated y'all don't want to talk about it anymore, is my understanding. But I would suggest to you it is not going away, and it will continue to fester and lead to appropriate unrest. Let me quickly address some objections I've heard from board members as you've evaluated this issue. I've heard it said, we have to maintain good relationships with the Board of Supervisors to make progress as a city and county. Let's think about the definition of real progress. Is it primarily the joint funding of a road or a roundabout or some similar joint action? That may be a modest measure of progress, but that is not progress compared to addressing an issue of human decency, addressing an issue of community respect, and advocating for symbols that are unifying. We are not asking you to jeopardize your relationship with the Board of Supervisors by this action. Another comment I've heard. We're working behind the scenes. Well, we've had 113 years to work behind the scenes. How's that worked so far? Board members and all city leaders should be working in public and behind the scenes only when necessary to make this happen or until it happens. You, as our elected representatives, should be leading the way. I've gotten to know citizen protesters over the last several months, athletes, and others like Jeremy Harris, who is here tonight, who have been leading the way of the consciousness of this city. We'd ask you to join them. Finally, I've heard members express, we don't often act on issues like this unless we do so unanimously. And I heard that early on in the process, demonstrated a little differently in recent weeks. But I would contend this board should be unanimous on this issue. It's a matter of right and wrong. The board would never, as you've indicated today, vote to put such a statue in the middle of town. We know better today. And we should do whatever we can to make this change after 113 years. Not voting to address this issue with the Board of Supervisors is tantamount to supporting its presence in its current location. The city needs to step up, join faith leaders, business leaders, veterans, and other citizens and lead on this community issue. This does not take courage. The statue on the square today is wrong, and we are culpable if we do not act and use our influence until it is relocated. There is no righteous cause to be celebrated. That is an untruth that has been perpetuated with this statue in our midst. Oxford prides itself on being a leading Mississippi community. We should lead the state on this issue. You have an opportunity to make a legal and culture-changing commitment, as was done 50 years ago here during integration. We ask our Board of Aldermen to reconsider its vote on October 6th and again tonight, and commit to pursuing the relocation of the Confederate statue. We welcome the opportunity to respond to questions and objections tonight or after this meeting and have an honest and open discussion about the board's leadership on this issue. With the board's strong support and advocacy, we can continue to build support to do the right thing for our city and county. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Oxford citizens with you tonight.
Thank you, Billy.
Billy, thank you.
All right. Number 13 on our agenda is to consider a resolution declaring October 30th, 2020 as Arbor Day. I'll let Bart move forward with that.
You've got the resolution in front of you. I'll read it if you'd like for me to. Whereas Arbor Day has been recognized nationwide since 1882, this year due to COVID-19, we moved our celebration from the spring to the fall, with both seasons being very good times to plant trees. And whereas recognized that the preservation of trees enhances scenic beauty, sustains long-term increases in property values, encourages quality development, enhances the economic vitality of business areas, reduces erosion, reduces heating and cooling costs, moderates the temperature, and cleans the air. And whereas a public policy of the City of Oxford favors the preservation of large, mature trees, which are a vital component of the beauty, charm, and character of the city. And whereas the stewardship of our urban forest not only requires planting of trees, but as importantly, the care and preservation of existing trees, especially since it is virtually impossible to replace heritage trees for the present generations of our citizens, and whereas all citizens of the city of Oxford are urged to do their part to protect our urban forest canopy and to care for trees in such a way as to preserve and promote their well-being for this and all future generations. So that's the resolution. If you wish to adopt it, that will declare.
Is there a motion to accept?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Accept a donation to assist in defraying the cost of licenses for the use of municipal property. Ashley?
Yes, we did receive one other donation here recently from Jean Jordan in the amount of $1,000.
From Jean Jordan. 1,000? All right. All right, because we have a motion to accept that generous donation. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to approve a list of final budget amendments and reallocations for FY 1920.
Yes, just as it states, this is a list of the final budget amendments for the fiscal year that we just finished. You'll see it's much shorter than the last list, so I've gotten many of them in previous housekeeping motions. One number I would like to point out is our sales tax number is coming down. You'll see that we did anticipate $10 million in collections for this year. Of course, due to COVID, it was down, so it was down approximately $610,000 for the year.
I move that we approve the budget amendments.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Amberlin requests permission to accept the proposal from Ed Rocket Logging for tree removal from existing and future rubbish sites. And you'll have that attached.
Yes, this information is in your packet. He proposed $500 for the tree removal of 13 acres. This will allow, we're gonna have to remove the trees regardless. So either we pay for it because there's not a whole lot of value in it, or we get them removed beforehand.
For free? For
He's
free?
gonna give us $500.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
So moved.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Amberlin. Consider request from Walmart to use a uniformed officer to work security traffic details for Black Friday events on November 7th, 14th, and 27th, 2020, between the hours of 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. Chief?
Mayor, we've done this the last several years. They're just going to extend some days just because not being able to have as many people in.
Sure.
Move we approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission for the Yachna International Folk Festival and organizer Andy Bedsworth to host a children's art installation in Faulkner Alley on January 14th through the 24th.
Andy will be doing the Fiber Arts Festival in that alley, and it's just going to be a come and go. There'll be some decorations and things hung up that people can come and see.
All right.
Andy is here. Did you want to say something, Andy? No.
Thank you, Andy, for coming up with so many creative things to go on the square, and we're really excited about this. Do we have a motion to grant them permission? No. Did you make a motion? Yeah. Oh, okay. Second. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Andy. Consider request for a revocable license for signage at the intersection of Cannon Road and Blunt Drive for the Eastover development. Rihanna.
Thank you. This is a request, as you stated, for a sign at the intersection. We have not yet accepted the right-of-way here, but we have to grant permission in order for it to comply with our requirements for accepting streets. The sign has been reviewed by Ben as Director of Planning, and it complies with all of those requirements. The sign, I'm trying to look back at my notes here. The request is for sign, landscaping, and a power source. It's going to be located over a sewer main and a sewer gravity line. So we may need an indemnity agreement, and so I've asked Pope to look at that, and so we may request that just in case our lines ever break and the sign is damaged as a result. We would not be responsible. The plans included show the addition of a curb and gutter, and that addition of curb and gutter is important because that is what brings the sign into compliance with all of the requirements for clear zone safety, so that curb and gutter there means that the sign is going to be compliant with the requirements for safety. I've included a list of recommendations. I've also noted that you have previously granted revocable licenses for monument signs at Highland Square on Molly Bar and at Brown Insurance, also behind curb. So while I will always stand here and say we should preserve our right-of-way, everything with this sign meets all of our requirements for safety. It meets all of our requirements for planning. The conditions I've requested are that the final location of the sign be approved by Oxford Utilities once it is staked, just to be sure that they can access what they need at the lift station, that an indemnity agreement is provided if recommended by legal counsel, that the sign foundation and landscaping have to be installed so that it's a minimum of 6 inches above the ground, and that staff, Oxford Utilities, and the applicant can work together to make slight adjustments in the field to meet field conditions. And that would be something we would work with together, and I've spoken with the contractor, the builder for Eastover, to be sure that that would be acceptable. So.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Next is consider change order number 2 for AMG Construction, Inc. in the amount of $11,060.66 for final quantities and for an additional 56 days of contract time for the MDOT Highway 7 County Road 401 utility relocation project.
Yes, these are final quantities, just clean up the project. We again had an additional overrun on our select backfill material based on the poor conditions of the soil in the area. And as I had previously stated with a previous change order, that select material is necessary to support the pipe, but we have to have it. The request for 56 days of time is based on the wet weather and the wet soil conditions. Our engineer for the project has recommended approval of that time and the additional change order, and I recommend the same.
Move we approve.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Bart, request permission to advertise for proposals for South Lamar Public Art Project.
This is for art that will be located in the roundabout at Belk and South Lamar. We're ready to move forward and just asking for permission to advertise for proposals.
I move that we approve it, and I'm very excited about this because it's going to look
be awesome.
great, and you don't have to water it.
That's right, that's right. It is gonna be great. Good, motion and second. Thank you, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you all. And at this time, I'll ask the board to consider an executive session.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? The board will now consider an executive session.